Take calculated risks and make good decisions. The whole area of decision making and risk taking is fraught with dangers. The problem is that if you don't make decisions in order to avoid risks, that's a decision in itself. So you might be the captain of a ship that's afraid of stormy seas, or you've been watching a film about the dangers of the Fastnet race, which goes round some of the roughest seas off Britain, and you don't want to go out in case you get caught in a storm. But your job as a captain is to sail the oceans. So staying in port isn't an option, certainly not for more than a day or two, to avoid a particular issue. And this whole thing about decision-making and taking calculated risks was, for me, illustrated very powerfully by Sir Ernest Shackleton, his ship Endurance, and the story of his voyage. It's called Endurance, is one of the ones I was listening to, is very powerful. He set out in just before or just around the outbreak of war, 1914, to go down to South Georgia and then to do some polar explorations. Maybe he was going for the South Pole, I'm not quite sure, but he was certainly doing some amazing polar exploring, but it all went badly wrong. The ship got caught in unseasonably thick ice floes, which then trapped the ship and cracked it, and just the whole thing eventually sunk. But they had to take all their stores and their dogs and their kit off the boat in time, and then they were floating around on these ice floes, some of them breaking up and people losing their kit in it. But he kept all his team. About 3 or 4 years he was away, often stranded, and had to go and get help from South Georgia. He went himself with a small crew on a boat. They might never have seen them again, but he brought all the people back that he took with him, in spite of all those incredible dangers, the weather, the deprivation, the difficulty, because of the calculated risks that he took. And I think back to my time as an army officer. There was a very challenging scenario that was played out where we were sent to do live firing training and simulated battle maneuvers in Canada in our warrior armored fighting vehicles. I had a company of 130 people and 13 armored fighting vehicles. And we were being simulated, and they could watch afterwards all that went on. And there was a particular time when I thought I was particularly bold, and I'd dashed through a breach in the minefield, I'd attacked the enemy, I'd pushed on up, and I'd taken a really well fortified position up on a hilltop, could see everywhere. I had everybody in all-round defense, and I stayed there too long. I was not sure what to do next, and I sort of, rather than go and take the initiative and finish and do the objective that we had to do, I stayed there for too long. And I think I was marked down for it because I wasn't at that time taking enough risks. I thought I was sort of managing everything, being really cool, and got everybody out with their anti-tank weapons ready for the enemy. It's a live enemy, force on force. But actually, I should have gone and taken more of a risk. And there was another time where we took a huge risk and we did a major attack, a squadron of 12 Challenger 2 tanks and my 13 warrior armored fighting vehicles roaring across the Canadian prairie to attack an enemy who'd outsmarted us, and they'd swung round and they attacked us from the flank. And within 5 minutes, nearly all the Challenger tanks and all our warrior armored fighting vehicles had been destroyed. They were taken out by laser simulation and flashing lights. The battlefield was littered with dead vehicles. Luckily, I got many of my troops out, but it was mayhem. And in that particular case, I took a bold risk. It didn't work out. But not making a decision because you're afraid of what happens won't help you. And it's the same in business. Lower down, your job is to make decisions. What does your firm do? It makes decisions. You're required at any level to make decisions rather than to dither and avoid, obfuscate, put them off. And as you get more senior, your job is to evaluate decision. And that's quite a key difference between decision making and decision evaluation. Decision evaluation, you say, this is my overall intent. What's your intent to achieve my intent? And what are the risks involved? What am I thinking now? What else should you be thinking about? What else? What else? Those are all the kind of things that help you in taking calculated risks. But the more senior you get, you want to evaluate perhaps once a week, once a month, whatever it might be. Some of the decisions that have been made lower down, because you need to empower people and trust people in a psychologically safe environment to take risks, make decisions, do the right things. As I think it was Storming Norman Schwarzkopf, can't say that after a few drinks, the American general in the First Gulf War. And he trained hard in peacetime, made it as close to war as it possibly could be, and indeed more challenging than they might meet in wartime, because this idea of train hard, fight easy. So prepare, think about calculated risk, do scenario planning, do risk calculations. What if the other firm did this, if we did this? What if the interest rates go up? What if the economy tanks? What if energy costs go up? You need to start practicing using AI, of course, Chat GPT, to think about the different risks and what are the cost benefit analysis. But take risks, but sensibly think about it. And also, don't forget to ask the people who are down there on the front line, who are dealing with your customers, what do they think if you did this? Because often you're too detached from what goes on to make really good risk. But ultimately, you have to make a decision. Dithering is a decision in itself. So take calculated risks like Sir Ernest Shackleton did.